Hey guys, wow. The first thing you notice isn't the shouting, it's the sting. It creeps into your eyes, into the back of your throat, before you can even make sense of the flashing red and blue reflection on the rain-slicked asphalt. You turn your head, but the air bites back, thick with tear gas drifting down a Los Angeles street you thought you knew. You probably won't survive this at least. Not without your sense of safety forever changed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and your local time in the comments, because knowing where we all stand matters, and let's go on the journey of today's story together. The sirens have been screaming for minutes, but now they're part of the background, like the constant hum of tension. A dozen ICE agents in dark windbreakers push forward, their boots slapping the pavement in sync, moving past hand-painted signs reading, "No human is illegal," and "Homes not cages." The crowd had been chanting, filming, holding the line between protest and panic until the first canister rolled. You don't see who throws it, only the sharp pop and the bloom of smoke. People cough, eyes water, someone stumbles over a knocked-over bicycle. Across the street, a man in a Dodgers cap lifts his phone high, live streaming. The caption will read, "ICE just tear-gassed us, watch this." And within an hour, it will have 1 million views. But here, in this moment, you're not thinking about views. You're thinking about how quickly order can fracture. From an official ICE news release earlier this year, you recall the odd boast. They'd seized 3,000 counterfeit luxury handbags during an unrelated operation in New York. It makes you wonder, how do handbags and human lives fall into the same bullet point list? A local columnist in the LA Times will later write that the agents' faces were unreadable, as if trained to ignore not only the chants, but the coughing children clutching their mothers' coats. That line will stick with you longer than the burn in your throat, longer than the ringing in your ears, because it confirms what your eyes already knew. The tear gas wasn't an accident. It was part of the plan. You keep moving because standing still means becoming a target. The smoke thins just enough for you to see the perimeter white DHS vans idling at both ends of the block, their side doors open like jaws. The agents didn't just appear. They arrived with precision, minutes after sunrise, when the streets were still waking. Why they came at dawn isn't hard to piece together. Dawn is when people are home, when the element of surprise tilts in their favor, when the cameras might still be off, and the journalists still in bed. You've read about these tactics before. ICE calls them targeted enforcement actions, a term designed to sound neat, almost surgical. But in LA this week, it feels more like a net being cast, wide enough to catch whoever happens to be standing in its path. The Guardian reported just last month that internal memos show coordination between ICE and certain local databases, scanning for expired visas, pending asylum cases, even traffic violations flagged in county systems. The raids in Boyle Heights earlier this year followed the same digital breadcrumb trail. An ICE press release last spring bragged about enhanced operational tempo, noting that agents had conducted simultaneous raids in 5 cities. Buried near the bottom of that release, though, was a bizarre statistic. Along with immigration arrests, they'd confiscated 14 exotic reptiles from an unrelated case in Florida. As if the presence of smuggled iguanas somehow bolstered the legitimacy of storming homes in the pre-dawn dark. Social media was already primed for outrage. On X, a viral thread by a street medic described watching a teenage boy get zip-tied while holding a carton of eggs he'd been sent out by his mother minutes before the raid began. The medic's closing line, they called it enforcement. I called it erasing a family, was retweeted tens of thousands of times before noon. And yet, in official briefings, ICE spokespeople framed the operation as both necessary and lawful, leaning on phrases like maintaining the integrity of our immigration system and removing threats to public safety. You look around at the coughing children, the shuttered tiendas, and you can't help but ask yourself, what definition of safety includes this? You turn a corner and find yourself on Maria's block, the air still carrying the acrid bite of tear gas. Maria isn't a headline, she's flesh and breath, clutching the door frame of a weathered duplex where geraniums still bloom in cracked pots. She came from Oaxaca 12 years ago, cleaning houses in Westwood, cooking for other people's children while raising her own two here. This morning, her hands shake not from the gas, but from the pounding on her door at 6:12 a.m. A knock that wasn't a knock at all, more like a command. She didn't open it right away. She'd heard stories of ICE agents in plain clothes, claiming to be police. But when she looked through the window, the letters on the jackets were unmistakable. One man stepped forward with a clipboard, another with his hand near his holster. She thought of her expired work permit still pending renewal after 9 months in USCIS limbo, and of the small bag of pan dulce she'd bought for her daughter's school breakfast. Both now felt like evidence. According to CNN's immigration desk, ICE has increasingly targeted collateral arrests, detaining individuals who weren't on the original list but happened to be present. Maria wasn't the name they came for, but she was here, and that was enough. They questioned her in Spanish, asked for documents, stepped past her into the living room where a Dora the Explorer backpack sat by the couch. From a February ICE report, you recall an almost surreal aside. During a raid in Nevada, agents also seized an illegal stockpile of fireworks. The language in the report treated both the humans and the fireworks as seized items, listed side by side. Maria's neighbor filmed part of the encounter from behind her blinds and posted it to Instagram stories. In the clip, you can hear Maria's daughter crying in the background. A local activist later stitched that video into a TikTok, overlaying it with the words, "She was not a threat. She was a mother." It reached 500,000 views in 24 hours. Standing there, you realize Maria's fear isn't just about being taken away, it's about being erased, reduced to a line in a press release, or worse, forgotten entirely once the smoke clears. You follow the flow of people retreating toward a side street, past walls tagged with fresh protest slogans and lampposts plastered with QR codes linking to Know Your Rights guides. But the numbers are what stay with you, the ones they don't print on flyers or shout through megaphones. According to Track Immigration at Syracuse University, Los Angeles County alone saw over 8,200 ICE arrests in the last fiscal year, with more than 62% of those individuals having no prior criminal convictions. That's not the image the official briefings paint, where dangerous felons is the phrase of choice. In the ICE public arrest logs, you notice an odd insertion. One field operation in Bakersfield netted 2 human smuggling suspects and an unregistered armored personnel carrier. An armored vehicle, buried between human names, as if the absurdity of it might be lost among the acronyms. The New York Times recently examined court records showing that a significant portion of these arrests originated from courthouse encounters, individuals appearing for unrelated legal matters, sometimes as victims or witnesses, who left instead in custody. The paper cited a California case where a domestic violence survivor was detained moments after testifying. The irony is inescapable. A system claiming to uphold justice using its own halls to stage ambushes. On social media, the protests in LA are framed through competing lenses. One ex-post from a self-described law and order voter insists that any enforcement is better than none and calls the raids a necessary wake-up. In contrast, a viral Instagram carousel by a community organizer overlays arrest statistics with images of children's shoes left behind during raids captioned, "Whose safety are we protecting?" You glance back at Maria's street, now quieter but not calm. The vans are still there, engines running, doors sliding shut on people you may never see again. The official count will mark them as numbers, each one a removal. But here on the ground, the numbers are faces, voices, routines interrupted mid-sentence. And once you've seen them this way, the charts and percentages feel less like data and more like ledger lines in a record of loss. The smoke hasn't cleared, but the shouting changes tone. It's no longer a wall of unified chants, it's a debate spilling into the street. On one side, you hear protesters yelling, "Families belong together," and "No more cages." Their voices are raw, not just from the gas, but from hours of calling out what they see as systemic cruelty. On the other side, a cluster of counter-protesters waves American flags and shouts, "Enforce the law and go home." Both groups occupy the same cracked pavement, breathing the same stinging air, each convinced they're defending the soul of the country. A ProPublica report last month detailed how ICE agents are trained for de-escalation, yet in practice, their presence often escalates tensions, especially when paired with visible riot gear. The LA operation fits the pattern: rows of agents in helmets and body armor, their mirrored visors reflecting the faces of those shouting at them. In a curious twist, an ICE newsletter recently highlighted agents' participation in a community softball tournament in Texas, complete with smiling group photos. The whiplash between that image and this street scene is almost dizzying. A man in a black hoodie steps forward, trying to talk to one of the agents. He asks, "Do you have kids? Do you know what this feels like?" The agent doesn't answer, only shifts his weight and scans the crowd. Behind him, another agent mutters something into a radio. Social media feeds capture every angle: a Facebook Live from a grandmother clutching a rosary, a TikTok showing a protester rinsing milk into a stranger's eyes, a short clip on X where two men nearly come to blows before being pulled apart. The ethical divide here isn't just about immigration policy, it's about whose pain we recognize as legitimate. Those supporting the raid speak of laws, sovereignty, and security. Those opposing them speak of dignity, compassion, and the sanctity of home. You find yourself standing in the middle, literally and philosophically, tasting the gas on your tongue, and realizing that the argument is more than words. It's a fight over what kind of country this is willing to be. By the time the last chants fade, the street feels hollow. The agents have gone, the vans swallowed into traffic, but the evidence of their presence lingers like a bruise. Families who didn't know each other before this morning now speak in hushed clusters, trading fragments of information: who was taken, where they might be held, which hotline to call. Someone hands out paper slips with an immigration lawyer's number, scribbled in black marker. A Reuters photojournalist captures a frame of a shoe lying in the gutter, small, pink, with glitter worn at the heel. The caption will later note it belonged to a 7-year-old girl seen crying as she was led away from the scene by an aunt. The image will circulate widely, paired with calls for donations to legal defense funds. Oddly, buried in ICE's own weekly roundup is a line about confiscating 420 pounds of mislabeled frozen seafood in a separate California operation. It's presented with the same sterile language used for apprehensions, making you wonder if the agency sees all contraband, whether human or halibut, as interchangeable lines on a ledger. Shops along the block stay shuttered through the afternoon. A taqueria that normally blasts rancheras from its open door is silent, its chairs stacked on tables. The air still carries that faint chemical sting, making your eyes prickle when the wind shifts. You catch sight of Maria's daughter peering from behind their curtain, the same backpack still by the couch. On Instagram, a street artist posts a mural in progress painted over the graffiti from earlier. It's a hazy depiction of faceless figures in masks, a child's hand reaching out through the smoke. The caption reads, "When the news moves on, we keep the walls talking." This is what's left when the cameras leave, not the spectacle of sirens and tear gas, but the quiet disruption of ordinary life. Bread left to go stale because no one felt safe stepping out. Homework untouched because the night will be spent making phone calls. The operation is over, but the tension has settled into the block like dust, fine enough to breathe in without noticing until it shapes the way you wake tomorrow. You walk away from the block, but the smell follows you, an invisible reminder clinging to your jacket. Tear gas has a way of turning the air into a question. What does it mean to govern through fear? You think about how it works, not just physically, burning eyes and choking throats, but symbolically, as a signal that resistance will be met with force. In policy terms, it's a crowd control measure. In human terms, it's a warning written in smoke. The Migration Policy Institute recently published an analysis linking heavy-handed enforcement tactics to long-term community disengagement, showing that immigrant neighborhoods subjected to visible raids are less likely to report crimes, even violent ones. That withdrawal isn't just about distrust in ICE, it seeps into relationships with local police, schools, even hospitals. In this way, a morning raid can echo for years. An odd footnote in ICE's March press archive still sticks in your head. During an enforcement operation in Arizona, agents discovered and seized a cache of antique typewriters from an abandoned storage unit. The release treated it as an amusing aside, but you can't shake the image, a pile of silent keys, each one once used to put words into the world. Like the people taken in these raids, their voices are now locked away. On TikTok, a philosophy grad student posts a stitched video of the LA protests alongside passages from Hannah Arendt on the banality of evil. It racks up hundreds of thousands of views, sparking threads about the moral line between following orders and questioning them. One commenter writes, "Gas is just gas until you're the one coughing." The reflection comes easily here. If the policies we create result in fear that silences a community, then we've traded safety for compliance. And compliance isn't the same as peace. You start to wonder whether the true danger isn't the raids themselves, but the normalization of them, the way they fade into background noise for those not directly affected, like the faint residue of gas you still smell hours later. You find yourself back near the metro station, where the city hum starts to reclaim its usual rhythm, but you're still carrying Maria's block in your head, the shouts, the smoke, the faces you can't name but can't forget. This is where your part begins, because the raids are not confined to downtown LA or to the morning they happened. They are part of a system, one that relies on distance, geographic, emotional, moral, to keep running. Closing that distance is the first act of resistance. The ACLU has been urging people to document ICE encounters, to share stories in public forums, and to connect them with legal aid networks. You remember reading an ACLU case file about a man in Fresno whose detention only came to light because a neighbor posted video on Facebook. Without that post, he might have vanished into the backlog of immigration court cases, over 3.5 million pending nationwide, according to Track. That backlog isn't just a number, it's a holding pen for lives on pause. From ICE's own newsroom highlights this summer, there's a strange tidbit. Agents in New Jersey recovered a shipment of counterfeit designer belts worth $250,000 during an unrelated operation. That dollar figure was presented with more emphasis than any mention of the human beings detained. It makes you wonder about the scale of value, what's worth printing in bolds, and what gets left as a line item. Online, the videos from LA's protests have become their own archive, reposted, dissected, debated. Some commenters demand stricter enforcement, others organize fundraisers for the families impacted. In between are the silent viewers, scrolling past without a word. That silence is a choice too. So here you are, with the decision in your hands, to share Maria's story, to talk about the tear gas philosophy that turned a street into a moral test, to remind people that law and justice are not interchangeable words. The question is whether you'll let this morning fade into another headline, or whether you'll carry it forward into conversations, into action, into whatever comes next. Because if you've walked through the smoke, you can't pretend the air is the same. The city moves on, as cities do. The sirens fade, the sun climbs higher, and the scent of tear gas is replaced by exhaust fumes and street food. You walk slowly, letting your steps lengthen, letting the noise of traffic soften the sharper edges of the morning. In the quiet between crosswalk signals, you notice small things again. A pigeon perched on a street lamp, the faint clink of a coffee cup inside a cafe, the way light filters through smudged bus windows. These are the rhythms that survive even the loudest disruptions. It's tempting to file the raid away as an isolated incident, a scene that played out and ended. But you know better. You've seen how a single morning can thread itself into a community's daily life, how conversations shift, how doors open a little less readily, how glances linger a little longer on unfamiliar cars. And yet, resilience is stubborn. You can feel it in the way people reclaim their spaces, children kicking a soccer ball in an alley, shopkeepers propping doors back open, a muralist brushing color over gray. The damage doesn't disappear, but it's met with acts, large and small, that refuse to let fear dictate the shape of the day. As the metro doors close behind you, the reflection settles. Justice isn't just about laws on paper. It's about the air people breathe, the safety they feel, the dignity they're afforded without condition. Carry that with you. Let it temper your voice when you speak. Let it steady your hands when you act. And when you tell this story, because you will tell it as you saw it, a morning where smoke made the invisible visible, and where choice became the truest measure of who we are.